My fellow dentists, are you frustrated with your team not being fully engaged and resisting accountability? Then you're in the right place. In this video, we're going to explore why dental teams never get to true accountability and that owner mindset that we want them to have. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the channel, my friends. We're going to be digging into what it takes to create a truly accountable team. And here's a mistake that we make as business owners, as novice business owners, that we don't make this connection. And I didn't make this connection for like 10 years into my practice life, okay? And I finally got it after that point of, if you know my backstory, being injured and being out of practice for a year, basically. I studied every other business that I could get a handle on. I read book after book. I talked to mentor after mentor, and I finally started to understand why it is that I'm so frustrated with 12 team members and other companies can run 1,000 team members and everything seems to be working out just fine. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's way better than what I'm doing, and I'm really pulling my hair out. So why is that, and what is the gap? Let's talk about it. So really the model is very simple. If we want our team members to get to the place of accountability and results, we have a lot of work to do in the front end. So what I've got up here on the screen, and we're going to jump over to the whiteboard here, is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Pat Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. You probably heard of it. I don't know if you've read it, but I highly recommend that you do if you haven't. This is something that we teach around. It's actually a full day workshop for our clients, and it's just so important. But the 5 dysfunctions are what we have in a team that is not working as it should. Our goal is to get to this place where we get to the 5 behaviors of a functional team. So we're starting, a lot of us, if we're honest, we're all starting here, and we want to get to here. How do we do that? Well, we've got to get through these stages first. Very simply, what's at the base? Most teams have an absence of trust. And because they have an absence of trust, they have a fear of conflict. Conflict is bad. We don't want to get into any kind of discussions or disagreements because, well, I don't want to put anyone out, or I'm afraid of what will happen to me, or if the culture is really bad, if you speak up, you might get fired, this kind of thing, right? And this creates a lack of commitment. And a lack of commitment makes it impossible to get accountability and results. It's just never going to happen. So if we go over here to the 5 behaviors, the 5 behaviors start with trust. So if we are going to start with trust, what does that look like? How do I create trust? What does that even mean? First of all, our team members need to trust each other and you as the owner. What does that look like? How do you create trust in a relationship outside of work? What do you do? Well, you spend time with the person. You get to know them. You understand what makes them tick. Oh, but I don't have time for this. This is a pain in the neck. I pay them. Can't they just do it? I wish. That's not how it works, right? So the bottom line is we have to put in the time. Again, you don't have to put in a ton of time. You just got to put in strategic time. And we'll talk about that. You have to put in the time where your team can get together outside of the busyness, the pressure pot of the dental practice day, and actually have time to talk and get to know each other. It's some very simple exercises, getting to know one another and understanding what makes each one tick. An example is sit around the table, even in your lunchroom, and obviously not having the phone ringing and patients waiting and all this kind of thing. Like, you want to have some time carved out for this. Ideally, you're doing this as like a half-day retreat out of your office somewhere. I'm not saying spend a ton of money. You don't have to go to like some fancy resort to do it. You can do it in a meeting room, down the road at a hotel if you want to, or get a room at a restaurant or something. But spend some time. And here's what I recommend you do. One simple exercise. There's many we can do, but one that we teach. Just go around the room and have everyone write down 5 facts about themselves that no one else in the office knows, or maybe they don't know. And if you want to guide it, okay, what was your best job? What was your worst job? How many siblings do you have? Where are you from? What is your favorite hobby? There's some very basic things, right? We're not like trying to have a psychology session with everyone. We're just trying to get to like, I want to understand who you are. And then have everyone go around the room and share. Okay, this is like one of 20 exercises that we teach to do this kind of thing. And you want to keep doing this because the teams that do this more frequently bond together. Now, this applies to any business, but I'm talking about dental practice specifically because what often happens in a dental practice is you hire a person because you have an immediate need and it's already busy. And there's no room for error, and everyone has to come in and go pretty well day one because we don't have a system for training. Most offices do not. Okay, I didn't until I got this figured out that we had a training person and a whole plan around that, which is what became Elite Practice later, right? But most offices don't do this. They bring on a person, they sit them down in their role, they give them something to look through, or they sit them beside a person who knows the role, and they just tell them go. And that is highly ineffective, okay? You want to spend time as a team. Now, when you get a person on board, you might have to put them in that environment quickly, but I want you to have something on the calendar at least once a month as an all-team meeting where you can spend some time with your team getting to build trust. Because if you build trust and something else happens, now you can move up to the next piece here, which is conflict. And conflict is not a bad thing. People hear the word conflict, they think, oh, I don't want to have conflict. I'm not talking about like backstabbing, screaming matches. I'm talking about productive conflict. Productive conflict is very different than what you're thinking. Productive conflict is where a team gets together and they can talk freely. You know, if you have siblings or you have best friends, you can say things to them that you couldn't say to someone you just met, right? You couldn't, call them out on something. You couldn't speak a certain way to them unless you knew them, right? Unless you they get me. They understand what I'm saying, and I'm comfortable talking to them, being a little bit more assertive or whatever. I'm not just going to sit back and try to tiptoe around because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. We need to have a level of trust so that I can speak to my team like friends. Like, hey, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but I don't agree. Here's why. Productive conflict is saying your piece and being heard. It's not saying your piece to be right, saying your piece to put down someone else. We're discussing a thing as a team, and I have an opinion about that. And I feel like I have the right to be heard about what I think. And you should be. Everyone on the team should have this opportunity to speak. Because if they do have that opportunity to speak and say their piece, now even if the team decides to go in a direction that one or two people didn't agree with, they can buy into it because they got to speak, right? And then they can, because everyone had a chance to speak, they can say, okay, well, I understand, why you see it this way, and I can go along with it. Because if you don't do this, then what happens is the meeting after the meeting. And you know what I mean, right? We sat down, we talked about a thing, it seemed like we're all in agreement, and then after the meeting, well, I didn't agree with that. I don't know why they decided that. I think that's stupid. We shouldn't do that. This is just it's gonna cause problems. Right? And then you get all this nonsense happening, and the team didn't decide on anything, and what you've got is more division. And then you have lack of commitment, which is part of the 5 dysfunctions, and we want to go to the 5 behaviors. So conflict, which is productive conflict, will get you to commitment. Because everyone has a chance to say their piece, now they can buy into it. Once they have committed, then you get accountability. Finally, you get accountability, and then you get results. With accountability comes results. So most of us want to go straight to the top without realizing you have to stop and backfill a whole bunch of pieces on the way there. You will never get results and accountability from your team unless you start at trust. Now, I gave you one tiny little exercise about trust building. There are books written about this. We have workshops about this. There's so much that you can do, but start somewhere, because I guarantee you probably don't have an intentional process around building trust with your team. Because here's what happens. If you have a trusting team and you get through the stages to accountability to results, a team that trusts, a team that really gels, you know what that produces? It produces patience that trust. Because if you have a team that is worried about, boy, I can't do this or I can't say that because I'm going to get in trouble, then you're never going to get out of first gear when it comes to having a referable experience and service that drives patient flow. It's never going to happen. You're going to be like those customer service experiences that you hear about on the news where the airline did something horrible and people are like, I can't understand why. And the person's like, I was just following protocol. This is my policy. Well, I don't want to lose my job. That is operating out of fear. That is basically avoiding accountability because I don't want to get in trouble. That doesn't work. That's terrible. That's the exact opposite of what you want to build. You want a gelling team, an accountable team that trusts each other, because that team engaged will create engaged patients. And you know what you can't get? you can't get an engaged team unless the doctor is engaged. So unless the doctor is willing to trust the team, and in turn the team trusts the doctor, the rest of this isn't going to fly. Because the team can actually, build some level of trust, but they'll never rise above their leader. So if the leader has a problem, trusts nobody on the team, doesn't know how to delegate, doesn't know how to lead, micromanages everything, then guess what happens to the team? You can't get out of first gear. You've dwarfed this pyramid, and you're never going to get beyond the place of trust. And if you can't get beyond trust, you'll never get results. So I've come at this from a few different ways. I hope that this is making sense, but this is, quite honestly, the foundation of what builds everything else that you build a practice around. If you don't have this, there is zero chance that you can build the practice that you want, because literally everything that you do as a dentist has to be done by your team. I mean, except the dentistry, right? If you want to really grow a practice and you're trying to do all the day-to-day operations in the business, you're trying to micromanage and run everything yourself, you will burn out. I've been there. I know what it looks like. Then I learned how to delegate properly and how to create a team. And when you do that, watch out. This is where things really grow. For me, we tripled our practice in 3 years, and I cut my work week in half. And I'm not the only one who's done that. With our system, we have clients' success stories that double, triple. Like, there's many of them. There's probably a dozen people who have doubled their practice or more just in the last few years working with us. Okay, so again, there's tons of case studies you can read about on our website if you want to see that. So my goal for you is to start in one place, and that is to focus intentionally on building trust. How do you do that? Spend time with your team, get intentional about it, appoint someone on your team as the culture champion for your practice, okay? That person's job is to do the things that you don't feel like doing. Maybe you're the one that feels like doing it. I don't personally. I'm a disc C personality. I'm fine being by myself. But your team, that's not going to fly. And you have to show up to some of these things. You can't skirt them all, okay? Have someone create a calendar of events. And here's the things we're going to do as a team to team bond, team build. And as much as you may not feel like being at all of them, be at least some of them, because it's super important that you and your team build trust together, not they go build trust and you do your thing. You have to do it together, okay? And another point I just want to make sure I've highlighted, I said it earlier, but I want to make sure I've been clear about it. To get trust, you must give trust, okay? So as a doctor, as a business owner, if I don't trust my team, they are not going to trust me or have trust among themselves, because I've created a culture where the trust is missing. If I start and go first and trust, and then create a framework where my team can build trust, we all now can get to the place where we need to get to, which is productive conflict, then commitment, then accountability, and results, okay? Hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully you've got something out of it. Start somewhere. Intentional attention to building trust. That is your homework. See you in the next video.